between Van View and Vitnu, or Vitny. Vitny is a Russian guy. He has small blind, he just flats. He just flats and disguises really his strength of the small blind. In the big blind, checks Vampu, and then the flop comes Jack, 6, and so Vampu makes a pair of 10s. Small blind is going to bet, and Vampu here has a decision to whether to raise or to call. With showdown value here, a middling hand, a 10, he doesn't need to raise. He has showdown value. He can bluff catch with the 10. He has a really decent bluff catcher, plus he has a redraw to the flush. So his decision of whether to bet or call is leaning towards a call, even though he wants to double up. Would he get more money? He has 23 blinds to begin with. Would he get more money by raising? If he raises, what would call? A jack would call? But otherwise, there's supposed to be a fold. So a call loses less money and still has the potential to win money. Because if he raises and he's way behind, then he's committed. Whereas if he goes more call line, where the small blind bets and he calls and he makes the flush, he's just hoping that the small blind will continue betting, and he's got position. He's got position, so he's fine to just call on the flop. He can make up the money later. So the turn has Vampu making the flush, and the king is going to bet, I believe. Yeah, the king bets out. The big blind raises with his flush, and here's a nuance. Once this flush card comes out, and that's the point of this video, once this flush comes out, the big blind, Vampu, is not betting 10 jack, because who would call? Only a flush would call, basically. Only things that beat 10 jack, such as even a set of 6s, would call at best. The set of 6s from this small blind would hope that the flush is a bluff, and then also he still has a set of 6, and then he can still pair up the board. So anyways, the point here is small blind Vit bets about 6,000. He raises to like 1.8 or something, and by this point we know that there's no 10 jack. 10 jack has great bluff catching value, but not when there's a flush draw. It's not a value bet anymore. It's a bluff catcher. It's a middling hand, a showdown value hand, whatever you want to call it. 3 names: middling hand, showdown value hand, bluff catching hand. Alright, so that makes sense. So there's no 2 pair. So once the big blind raises, we know that the ranges are narrower and more polarized. Right? Good. So kings is either way behind or way ahead. So he calls, he didn't shove, and he's calling because he has a redraw to the king high flush, and he still has kings, which is still a bluff catcher on this board, because even though there's no 10 jack, there are still other bluffs, such as a lone ace high. Lone ace high or ace 6 with a ace of spades. It would make sense that the big blind might raise. Or if the big blind called with something like ace 9 with the only ace of spades, then 9, 10, 11, 3 to the straights. Well, no, that'd be pretty hard to do. Queen 9 is a possibility with a lone spade. Would call the flop and then call and raise the turn, because Queen 9 has no showdown value. But that's pretty hard to do, to have that. King Queen shouldn't. Yeah, King Queen, no. King Queen wouldn't just check, would he? Yeah, King Queen wouldn't check pre-flop, I don't think. So Queen 9 with a Queen of spade would be on the turn for the big blind a flush draw and a straight draw, open and a straight draw. So anyways, the point I really want to make is 10 jack is no longer existent once the big blind raises. Now onto the river. So this guy calls the raise, Vit, and then a brick hits. He still bets for value. He shouldn't bet for value at this point. He should bluff catch. He has kings and he can bluff catch. This is a brick, so if big blind had the flush, if big blind had the flush on the turn, then he has it. So he bets just to not be bluffed by the flush. So he bets a decent amount too. They said it was 6,800 or something like that. And then when the big blind raises all in, 23 blind total was the starting stack. And then there's really no bluffs. They said if this guy had bet like 4,000 as a blocker bet and then got raised, there might be more bluffs, because facing a raise after you've blocker bet, there's more bluffs involved. So ranges narrow when the bets are bigger and the calls and the raises. So that's another point here. So one point is that there's no 10 jack. The other point is that blocker bets, if you bet bigger, if you bet big like this at 6,800 and then you face a raise, then yeah, it's less likely of a bluff. The ranges are just narrower. So that's another point I wrote down here. Ranges get narrower every bet, call, raise. So every action that you have to voluntarily put money into the pot narrows the range more and more. So anyways, there's all this talk that the Vit Russian guy starts talking, and then it ends up with a talk that's really polarizing. So then this guy still shoves. So then this guy should not have kings by that point, because kings on this board is a middling hand because the flush is on board. So he really shouldn't have kings by polarizing himself. He should either insta fold or insta call. Super strong. or super weak, yet he just has kings, which is a middling hand. So 3 points. 1 point is right here. If the big blind raises the turn, there is no 10 jack on a 3 flush board. So big blind does not have 10 jack. That's a good point. I like that. Number 2 is when you have position, I guess that's number 2. You have position and you have a pair of 10s. That's a pretty good bluff catcher. Plus you have to redraw to the flush. So you don't have to raise the flop. Oh, the other thing is, in order for the turn raise to happen, it's either not 10 jack, but it can still be queen 9 for opening a straight draw plus a queen of spades as a flush. So that turn raise, the bluff is the queen 9 or ace 6 with 1 spade, ace of spade. That's also a turn raise. See how there's 3 flush and a long ace, so the big blind could have that. That'd be the bluff part. And then the big blind on the turn has all the flushes. And then the third thing is, if you polarize yourself, you really should not hold a middling hand. Middling hand is not something you want to polarize. You don't bet big with a middling hand. And if you put out a blocker bet, then face a raise, there's more bluffs in that. But when you bet like this guy did, 6,800, and then the small blind still shoves, then it's either you're way ahead or way behind. You don't have kings in this spot. You either fold very easily or you call very easily in a polarized situation. That's the virtue of polarized, but that's a middling hand. So those are interesting points. Great one.